Hey everyone.
Hi, guys.
Good afternoon and welcome to Trail Talk. Boy, I'm glad you guys could join us today.
We're
Yes, I'm Edie.
here and I'm Mary.
And we've got, we haven't really done this before.
We dedicated the month.
To something, but not just like a series that kind of connected to each other, like this one about the ranch cattle industry.
We've done it now.
Yeah, we have. There's always something new happening on Trail Talk. You just never know what's going to happen. And I just want to say hi to our new friend Karen for joining us today. Karen, thanks for zooming in.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Okay, so let's just dive in. So the ranch cattle industry, you guys might remember, or if this is your first one to watch, you're going to want to go back and watch the other three. But we started out with like the history of how cattle
Came to be.
yes,
here.
how they came to Oklahoma, the involvement with the tribes, the Indian tribes, as they were brought here and their land was the reservations were set up for them, and land leasing, the government's involvement, the government not allowing, calling on the War Department to enforce things. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Therefore, we've had a month dedicated.
Exactly.
You can't get through it all in one.
Yeah, and then last week we talked about a few of the ranches. Some still exist, some are no longer active, but some just of historical significance. And actually, probably like
As a whole.
a financial significance
Mhm.
to the state,
Mhm.
and kind of just establishing that ranch cattle industry here. And, kind of in a more modern sense.
Yeah.
And so that leads us to today's topic about the I always grew up calling them the Oklahoma City Stockyards, but they're actually called the Oklahoma National
I've never
Stockyards.
actually heard it referred to as the national stock.
Right, but that name in and of itself, to me, signifies its significance in the US.
And the size. I mean, it's not just one little bitty, one little
Right.
piece. It's a big
Right, like
portion.
there's or there used
prominence
to
of,
be like an auction place even in Marlow,
Mhm.
where people would take their animals
Livestock,
and
uh-huh.
auction, and that's a small little stockyard.
Right.
But this is a very significant one. And so the early days, this is, you can tell that
Times were- They were as bustling.
this is a picture from the Oklahoma Historical Society. I do like the Longhorn up there. It
Mhm.
kind of makes me think of the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center, because we've
We
got
have
Longhorns hanging around everywhere. But this was,
getting things settled because he's building something here.
and it almost looks like railroad.
I was gonna say, it looks like train track.
And that was the rail system played a big role in the location of the stockyards.
Mhm.
So, the Oklahoma National Stockyards Company was the state's first major industry, which I mean, just 3 years after statehood,
Mhm.
which I find to be just really amazing that our state was so young. And I mean, probably feeling like, oh, we're struggling along, this, and someone says, hey, I think we've got the makings for something
Right.
really big.
This was big enough to be our very first industry.
Yes, exactly. And so there was the packing plant, which is where animals are butchered and cut and processed into the meat that you buy in the stores. And livestock sales terminal was on 120 acres of land that was 2 miles west of downtown Oklahoma City. But this is pretty significant. It
Mhm.
provided 2,400 jobs, and the population of the city,
About 60,000.
right. So that is a significant
Yeah.
number of,
It's a boom for jobs.
yeah, for sure. So number one, it was meeting a need,
Mhm.
a financial need for the company. But I think it was turns out to be the perfect storm, so to speak, as far as the location, the fact the cattle were here, the ability to ship.
Taking advantage of
And-
what we had available. and
Exactly.
Making something work from it.
And 120 acres, that is a very large piece of land.
Mhm.
It's almost a quarter section of land that they've used. And so until 1961, livestock sales were handled by private agreement or treaty. But then a second mode of trade was introduced, the auction.
And that provided greater competition all around.
Right, and if you've ever been to a livestock
Mhm.
auction, those are so cool. Have you ever been to
I've
one?
never been to one.
They are pretty, they're,
Closest thing I've seen was Dr. Paul.
I used to get kind of confused. My mom and dad, we would, haul the calves off periodically. And there's a small stockyards over by Apache, which is just a few miles from
Mhm.
where they live.
Mhm.
And occasionally we had been in there when they were selling, and they run this, like, fill this small lot full of cattle,
Mhm.
and people are bidding on them. And I was like, I don't know who's bidding on what. I don't know how,
Or
They
they know
know.
what they're bidding on.
but they had them marked by lot number.
Mhm.
And it
There-
was very
It's like a
organized.
preview beforehand, so they know what they're
Yes,
getting.
yes, they have them all in pins. We're
Mhm.
gonna look at some pictures. They have them in pins. You can go by and see, and you write down the numbers
What you're
of
interested
the
in.
cattle that you're interested in, yeah, and purchase them. And remember that this is, I mean, it's later in time, but this is what happened in Abilene.
Right.
At the end of the
To load it up.
cattle drives,
Mhm.
they would do this very same process to load those cattle on those trains and haul them off.
Possibly even once they got there.
Yeah,
they
because
were just
someone
in-
else was buying them once they got to Chicago or
Right.
New York or wherever, yeah. So the auction really helped with the growth, and the Oklahoma City livestock market became the world's largest market of stocker and feeder cattle, selling yearly receipts of well over 500,000 head. I am just blown away by that. That is so amazing. So let's see what this next slide is. So, okay, here are some of the cattle pens. This was in 1933.
Okay.
About 20 years or so after it opened, but you can see how, I mean,
Sectioned off.
yeah, everything, and it's very easy. You have this walkway, these
Mhm.
people on this fence, they're looking in, they're
Buyers.
potential buyers. They have their auction numbers so they can, make their bids. And yeah, they're checking them out, and they're looking for specific things. We talked about
The different breeds.
different breeds and different cattle
Right. Qualities.
and cuts
Right.
of beef and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And so that's what these men are knowledgeable, and they are sent as buyers from
Representing other.
companies. And so they are there to purchase these. And so in I've got some more pictures of some of this going on here. Some of these. Well, they're probably there just to see all the action. But everybody's got a little paper and pencil. Look at this young kid here.
Yeah.
He's writing something important down. Mhm.
The stylings of the jackets.
Yeah. And then here's another one, kind of a more distant,
Mhm.
at just this gives you a little more
Layout.
enormity of, the sizes of the pins
Mhm.
before they put them in those smaller, and
More
mhm.
segregated.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was quite an undertaking, but, oh, well, this one is the one I wanted to get to.
Okay.
All right, so following the purchase of the land, the building of the pens and everything, some businessmen were able to raise the interest of these packing companies.
Mhm.
These are the processing plants, and you're going to recognize the names of some of these companies. By 1915, Morris, Wilson, and Armour had established these huge packing facilities to slaughter the cattle, hogs, and sheep that were transported first by the cattle drives, then by railroad and truck. And that's when they started calling this area Packentown. Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard it
Mm-mm.
referred to as
Mm-mm.
that. So Nelson Morris, an Oklahoma City businessman met with a representative of the Nelson Morris Company of Chicago in May of 1909. So this was kind of how it got started. If a $300,000 to propose, what he was wanting to do was for this packing company to come to Oklahoma City, if they would give them a $300,000 cash bonus and property concessions. And so this was your typical, probably kind of the beginnings of an economic foundation, kind of like things that Data does, or any kind of an economic
Bringing
branch.
companies into towns.
Right, and giving incentives. We
Right.
still hear about this type of thing happening. You know, they get a tax break, or they get some kind of a bonus, or they get some land or a building,
Right.
or whatever the city can offer.
Enticing them to come.
Exactly. And so these propositions started happening. A man named Anton Klassen and Charles Colcord, well,
Clausen
right, yeah, you guys are familiar with Klassen Boulevard and also the Colcord building
Mhm.
in Oklahoma City. So this district was formed, and here is where the packing town started. Yeah. And so we had that Morris Company is now known as Armor. The Wilson Company was before called Schwarzschild and Sulzberger. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how that
I'm
worked.
glad you were able to say that. 'cause
Yeah,
I was- I
Yeah,
would've
exactly.
time through that.
Let's see, what was it? Morris, Wilson, and Armor. Well, Morris became Armor. So anyway, but together they all represented an investment of about $3.5 million.
Can you imagine?
In
Was that-
in
that- I was gonna say, that was
1910.
that 3.5, that year, 3.5
Yes.
million. Not estimated today's
Yeah.
money, that time.
Yeah. Well, it said $300,000. I mean, that's probably so. A $300,000 bonus was offered in 1909. Think of the dollars that would be today. This was a major investment, but how,
But really, I mean, Oklahoma's been paying,
right, yeah, we
Tenfold.
received the dividends of that
Mhm.
over and over and
Mhm.
over again. I find that to just be a really amazing thing to just consider. So in addition to the $300,000 bonus, there was also a 5-year tax exemption, sewer and streetcar lines, a belt railroad, and land adjacent to downtown and to the North Canadian River. So, I mean, they did have the luxury of having wide open spaces still available.
right,
that-
it wasn't a congested downtown Oklahoma City area like you think
Right.
of today.
Right, yeah, offering land and incentives like that would be a lot more difficult today. Along the river and
You
all.
probably couldn't find that much acreage in one spot anyway.
Right, yeah. And so then they got a bank that would sell off the lots. It's 120 acres total. They would sell off lots to other businesses. And so it wasn't just a packing plants and a stockyard that the vision entailed. It was other businesses.
Right.
This is going to be a whole,
Kind of community within a community.
yes, exactly.
And those lots were sold for like $150 to $300 each.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking.
Yeah, this pretty,
Getting a
pretty good
bargain
stuff,
for it.
yeah. And so as they were, I guess, had foreseen, our entrepreneurs constructed a coliseum for stock shows, rodeos, FFA events. And the original one burned down, but they rebuilt.
Right.
And if you guys remember, our friend Emery, who works here, FFA president and just outstanding FFA representative. Yeah, he's here. So I'm
He's sitting there just
yeah.
shaking his head saying,
He's
"Oh,
like,
stop it,
yeah,
stop it. Oh, no,
go on.
continue.
Yeah.
Continue."
anyway, the stockyard or the place where the stock shows happen today is on the fairgrounds, but that's very near this part of town where the stockyards are located. Yeah, it's, yes, exactly. I mean, it's all right there. May 10th, Exchange, all of those streets, it's all kind of right there.
Yeah, right.
And that whole part of town has that kind of Western feel to it. Because, and that's part
And
of
that's not
the-
by chance.
No, it's not by chance, and it's part of what makes it so historically significant today, because that it has maintained that same
Feeling
feeling.
of that era and the reason for being.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then they had transportation became a key factor. You know, as we've talked about the governors of Oklahoma, we've talked about how building roads, that whole infrastructure part of being the governor, how important many of those governors made that in what they did when they were in
Right.
office. And so this follows right in hand with that. The stockyards personnel realized their fortunate central location for motor truck travel. And by the 30s, farmers were transporting their cattle to market by pickup truck with US Highway 66 and 77 developed nearby, and Route 66, we all know, became, you know, get your kicks on Route 66. I'm not gonna sing it, but you know, the whole deal. So just a look, I'm gonna go back. This is Ray Teener. This is what has become Teener's Western Wear. Teener's Outfitters, yes, exactly. And it all started in the 30s, I believe. Let me get that date for sure. Okay, wait. Oh, it was established in 1916. And back then it was called the Friendly Store.
The friend.
Oh, wait, no, that was Langston's.
Okay.
That was Langston's. Teener's, I think was in the 30s. But anyway, he established a business there. Now there's more than one Teener's Outfitters,
Oh, yeah.
but it all started
Right there.
right there. And I've even called this, kind of referred to it as Cowtown, but Packing Town, Stockyards,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know. Here's another picture of the area. Now you can see it's a little more built up than the one we saw earlier.
Right. There's a head now on the horse.
And this is very early on though. These are probably cars from the teens or 20s right here. I'm guessing. So if my husband was here
That's
again, he
like-
could identify
that's
these
like the-
vehicles
yeah.
exactly. But in the first 5 years of operation, the volume of livestock handling increased by 130%. So they knew they had made a really good business decision. And by 1966, the Oklahoma National Stockyards had become the 6th largest market in the nation on the basis of livestock handling, representing $125 million in annual business. Now, this is in 1966.
125 million.
This would be considered,
$1966.
yeah, this would be considered a
Billion.
very successful business in today, 125
Oh,
million.
yeah.
And,
sure.
and so they were really doing well. By 1973, they sold 919,280 head of cattle in 1 year. Almost 1 million
Nationally.
cattle. Yeah, and that was, number one in the nation as far as that
And it
goes.
still remains the world's largest stalker and feeder cattle market.
Yeah, so it's just really maintained itself. Now, some of the businesses have come and gone.
Right,
There've been ups,
right,
there's been
yeah.
downs, you know.
As a whole market of cattle.
Yes, which helps, you know, the beef cattle industry is the number one. That's the number one agriculture market in Oklahoma. So, you know, that was a good decision. Let's see. Oh, here we go. In 1954, this steer, look at that curly haired.
I was looking to see.
He's a Hereford.
Tall.
He does look really tall. The 50 millionth steer was sold.
54.
Yeah.
And
In
he's just like,
1954.
yeah, what up?
Yeah.
It's me.
He's like, yeah.
I'm here.
I'm going to the packing plant
That's right.
next. Nice knowing y'all.
Right.
Sorry.
Be seeing y'all.
That's a little bit crass, but yeah, I mean, seriously. But they had opened a post office, bank, restaurants, all these stores. I mean,
It's like its own little.
commerce and industry and yes, the whole thing. It was really going well. In 61, in 73, they added a hog auction. And when I showed sheep and we would, at the end, I mean, you have your lambs that you can't breed them. And so you sell them to the market. They would just back a truck up there at the show barns at the fairgrounds. And you just took your lamb,
The lift up.
and you just take your lamb and turn it loose and they load it, they put a mark on it, you give them a card and they give you something, and so then they'll sell your lamb and you get a check in the mail. I mean, that's sadly, it's not necessarily sadly. It is a great experience for children and young people to go through all of that raising, caring for, letting go kind of thing. It's hard and it is sad because you get attached to them, they become pets, but it's all part of that life cycle and it's part of the business side of agriculture. And that's one thing that's a good lesson to learn. So in 1968, a company from Delaware took control and they made improvements that included metal pins, a new dock, and a new loading chute. So, I mean, you get some outside the state interest. Maybe there was some, a struggle from inside the state investors or,
Difference of opinion.
right. So they had, in the 70s, they became the nation's third largest calf producing state. We did. And by 1980, 70% of farm income came from livestock. Let's see. And in the 80s, Oklahoma City emerged as the nation's #1 cattle market, tallying receipts of 1 million animals per year. So that 1973 number, that was just like building.
Right.
That 919,000, that was building to that $1 million. Let's see what our next. So here, yeah, so this is
Look at your
1963, an aerial view of the stockyards and all the, look at this. This is just the barns and the pens out
I
here.
mean, the people definitely are outnumbered by by the livestock.
Absolutely, and you have, you have water towers because you have to have sources of water, you have your packing plants. And then there are businesses.
Water.
Yeah, a water
Plant.
treatment thing right there, it looks like. Here is this is a little harder to see. This is 1970 aerial view.
Looks like we flipped around.
Yeah, I think we're looking at it from a different direction, but it just still shows, there's the river. It's the North Canadian River over there. And it just still kind of shows
Roads being built.
yeah, and all of the pins and all of the things, businesses
Popping up and
popping up
belly.
down there. All right,
we
and so
go.
this leads us to a little more modern day look at the stockyards. So for over let's see, for 112 years, 112 years, the stockyards have been happening,
Around.
a real
and-
thing,
Yeah.
a great place of industry and history, brought into the present day. They're part of the Main Street USA program, which is probably helps them get
Kind of
funding.
maintains their.
They
heritage
maintain
the way it
things.
is.
I mean, you can see this is a brick road.
Right.
So a portion of that has been saved, historically accurate, and you can see people lined up on the sides.
They do this, is it every weekend? Every
I
Friday or
think
Saturday?
Be-
Once a week,
between
right?
between Christmas and Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think they have, or maybe in October, they start. I don't know that they do this here every week. In Fort
Longhorn
Worth-
cattle drives, Christmas parades, December and sidewalk sales.
Yeah, I know they do it, but I don't know if they do it. I think in Fort Worth,
That's where
they
do
have
it,
one,
They do it. more
yeah,
often.
down there, more often, but, they have, since its inception, more than 102 million head of livestock have passed through. When this article that I had got this information from was written, it said auctions were held on Monday and Tuesday each week. I don't know if that's still, true or not. But we talked about Langston's,
Mhm.
Teeners. Yeah, I liked this picture because again, the Longhorn. See, I wore my Longhorn thing here. Exactly. This is another picture, people waiting out here, probably, I don't know if they're waiting to go to a restaurant or what, but this is, an old time water tower and just, some of the things just to kind of keep that historical feeling, there.
Preservation of the certain things.
The Opry, yeah, the Oklahoma Opry is right down there in the Stockyards area. Probably more than one boot or Western wear store is
I'm
down
sure.
there.
You're in the market for some boots, I'm sure you
Mhm.
can probably find
Yeah,
Jimmy's to pair.
and these are gonna be your authentic
Western.
Western where what's the,
Justin.
the one here in town, the
Crutchers.
Crutchers. You remember when Mark Crutcher was on and we talked about boots
Mhm.
and cowboy hats.
Right.
And how the working cowboy of today still wears a hat and a boot, not just for fashion's sake, but for the work required by the cowboy. Those are still functionally the best attire for a cowboy to wear.
There's a reason for its
Yes.
design. There's a
yes.
reason it's designed that way, and that design has held true for all these years.
Exactly. And there are some that are more fashion trendy.
Well, yeah, I'm sure the working cowboy probably has his going out boots. on,
Exactly.
Saturday
Yes.
night
His
date
dancing
boots.
boots. You gotta have two-stepping boots. I
Yeah.
mean,
You don't want to go out to the club and
yeah, with
your
your,
dark.
they're
nails.
gonna have a smell. It's gonna be a little bit of if you've ever ridden up next to one of those trucks on the highway full of cattle, that smell could get in your
Travel
clothes.
to Kansas.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And anyway, so you can find your authentic Western wear
Down
in this area. Yeah. Cattleman's Steakhouse here. This place is, everybody needs to go at least once. It first opened, there's a great story that goes along with this. So it first opened in 1910. I mean, back in the day, it was one of the few places that stayed open after sundown. During Prohibition, a colorful clientele was attracted to their liquid delights
And a really good steak.
and a really good steak. Yeah. An historical highlight occurred in 1945 when Gene Wade, an area rancher, was challenged in a dice game by the owner of Cattleman's Restaurant, Cattleman's Steakhouse. He wagered his life savings against the steakhouse. Now,
Yes, what happened?
I'm just gonna say that was a big wager.
He
Well,
must
I
have
don't know,
been-
his life savings.
Well,
It could have
He
been,
might have been hitting the liquid delights.
he could have been hitting some big liquid
know.
lights, yeah. Anyway, so he threw a hard six and found himself in the restaurant business. The owner of Cattleman's Steakhouse lost the steakhouse in a poker game,
Mr. Wade became the owner.
a dice game, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a great little story.
There's
about
pictures and
the death.
mementos they sit on the walls.
Yeah. There are unique operations in the Stockyard area. They're headquarters for the International Professional Rodeo Association, which has like 400 rodeo events every year. It's really a must-see place. So this is one of your
Bucket list.
vacay destinations, day trip right here.
It is.
Go visit the Stockyards up in Oklahoma City. But don't go next weekend because they're closed for Labor Day. This was on their Facebook page and I couldn't resist.
So just wait,
Yeah,
hold off that excitement, let it build,
yeah.
percolate on it for a bit, and then go.
They could go later in the season. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, everybody's gonna wanna go after we
That's
talk
right,
about it. But don't go next,
Not
next
this
weekend. Yeah.
Come see us instead.
Yeah, that's right, because we'll be open. We will be open. They're up to their 5th president since inception. It says 500,000 animals still continue to arrive each year. 9 commission companies are still operated, but 99% of the sales are by auction. And it's one of half a dozen large stockyards in the United States where there used to be
More than
more than 2 dozen. And anyway, I think one reason it has been able to stay, I mean, it still has that prime location with the railroad and all that, all of those things. It's still in cattle country, right? They are, I think it's the packing plants. Several of those closed or, yeah, move their production elsewhere. You can, these are the cattle trucks.
Right.
They load them on there and, they have cattle, hogs and sheep that go through the stockyards and but it has all of the history and all of those good
The
things.
feel about it, you know?
Yeah, that still makes people want to come and visit, right? Yeah, so anyway, that's what we know today. Now, I do want to let you know, Miss Karen, who's watching with us today, contacted me earlier because she had found out sometime before today about a family whose last name is Lackey, and a Mr. Lackey who had a lot to do with the beginnings of the stockyards. And so because we just got in contact today, I haven't been able to research all of that yet. She has some information she's going to share with me. So we will have another episode of Trail Talk that's going to go into some more information about the stockyards and the Lackey family and just see you know what all we can find out about that. So you guys know I'm always excited to have someone give us an idea. Yeah, and something new to research.
That's what I'm saying. She is a rabbit hole go-getter.
That's right. So
I gotta always pull her out.
give me something to research and
Thank you.
I will be so excited to go there. So anyway, be sure and join us tomorrow. Gina Flesher and Bonnie Talley from the Gabriel's House Foundation are going to be here because they have a big fundraiser coming up for the foundation. And we're going to talk about that and talk about the plans for the foundation. Maybe you're familiar with those. Maybe this will be the first time you hear about them, but we sure hope that you're able to join us for that. Karen, thanks again for
Thanks
the
for
phone
joining
call
us.
and for joining us.
You're
And,
welcome.
yeah. And well, you can say happy
There you
trails
go.
with us, okay?
Happy trails to you.
There you go. We'll see you
Okay.
guys tomorrow. Happy
Happy trails.
trails.